All right, warm welcome to this slightly later edition of the Tropical Outlook on what is a rather wet evening here at Mark Vogan Weather HQ. Thanks for clicking on to this weekend Tropical Outlook. We do have one system that is keeping our attention in the pretty far south over the tropical Atlantic. That remains an investor area. There's nothing definitive just yet, but the models have been continuously trying to develop this, but more so once it enters the Caribbean. More detail on that in just a second. We do have a couple of interests in the Indian Ocean. We've got the tropical storm Cheng. We've also got an interest area west of Sumatra, and we've also got the tropical depression Fen Shen in the South China Sea. This is the latest visible satellite imagery of the system that is tracking towards the lower portion of the Leeward Islands. It remains an area of thunderstorms. If we look at this imagery in a little bit more detail, there is elements of northeasterly winds in combination with perhaps some southwesterly winds to the west of this system as it approaches the islands here. We also have some dry air in place as well. There is less moisture in the vicinity of this system compared to what we've seen yesterday, and therefore that is just kind of dampening down this feature from really getting going. It developed in an unusually far east position for the time of the year. You tend to find the Cabo Verde season begins to wind down at this time of the year. And the focus then turns more west towards the Caribbean, north of the islands, and also the Gulf of America. But you can see here that it does have a 60% chance of development over the next 7 days. But I wanted to, first of all, show you the Caribbean weekly wind shear is below average by quite a bit here. And really, once we got into the month of July, we had stronger shear during the early portion of the season, and then once we headed into the kind of middle portions of July, we started to see a downward trend in shear, but we just didn't have any systems in this area to then get this season off to the races. And the problem is now that with a lack of activity in the Atlantic, in fact, very, very quickly, let's have a quick look at the tracks so far. I should have pulled this up, but I just had the idea right there and then. But you can see here the congregation, a very strong congregation of tracks north of the leewards with a recurve over the west portion of the subtropical Atlantic, which is interesting. We did have this system, I can't remember the name of it, that went into the west coast of Florida, then up into the Carolinas. One lone system that developed over the west portion of the Caribbean Sea, crossed over the Yucatan and into the region very close to the US-Mexico border. But you can see here this tweet, Lorenzo formed in a peculiar place for mid-October. Not since Nicholas and Peter in 2003 have we seen a named storm form this far east. So this was obviously Lorenzo that formed back a week or so ago. But not since 2003, two systems have developed in the far east tropics. So, yep, that is in relation to Lorenzo. But this system was quite a robust wave that came off Africa, and unusually it held its own. Now, it was struggling, it has to be said, shear and drier. Not so much in the way of shear, but actually perhaps the fact that it was at 10 degrees north of the equator. You tend to get less spin within the atmosphere that close to the equator. But the fact is this system has managed to cross the main development region in the far south portion of the main development region. It survived, and it's now moving towards an area where we need to pay close attention. So obviously, like I said, the lack of activity has allowed a build-up of heat within what is a very warm part of the world anyway, but we're a good 3 Celsius above average in the Caribbean, maybe just a little touch below that level in the Gulf. But nevertheless, when you look at the current SSTs, this system, all it needs to do is hold the energy, the spin. It's essentially a tropical wave, a ripple within the atmosphere at the moment. But all it takes is for a little bit more moisture, a lack of wind shear, and over this 30 Celsius waters, and we could all of a sudden have a beast on our hands. And that is the concern. Yeah, it may not do anything, but it may, I think personally, without hyping this up, this has the chance. This could become a Category 5 in no time. We've seen it with two systems already this season. I think it was Erin and the other name escapes me that became Category 5s like that. And all it takes is for the right environment over such warm waters to see an explosion in development and intensity. So what is the NHC saying about this system then? According to NHC anyway, this is as of the 8 a.m. advisory. The system has got, like I say, a 60% chance of development over the next 7 days. This is going to be a slow burner. It has been for the last week, but the middle portions of the upcoming work week is of concern. Near the Windward Islands in the Caribbean Sea, a tropical wave currently located near the windwards is producing a large area of showers and thunderstorms. Heavy rainfall and gusty winds are expected today through Monday morning across portions of the windwards and leewards as the system moves quickly westwards. Now, its forward speed also has an impact. If you've got the system moving faster, essentially, than its overall steering environment, that then creates a level of shear, and it stops the system from developing. What we're looking for is a closed circulation. Then once we get that, it will become a depression. I'll show you in just a second the modelling here. I want to show you the vorticity within the atmosphere and how all of a sudden it goes from according to the models anyway, it goes from an open wave to a closed circulation, and then that needs to be watched with lower shear within the Caribbean and those warm waters beneath it. So the system is moving very rapidly at 20 to 25 miles per hour. That is an inhibiting factor. It's moving too fast into the Eastern Caribbean Sea. Additional development is forecast to be limited over the next day or two due to the fast forward motion of the wave. So it needs to slow down in order to see the generation of more stronger convection, colder cloud tops. It's actually essentially causing its own shear by moving too fast. The system is expected to slow down over the Central Caribbean. Then we need to watch out for what's taking place further north with the ridging and a weakness in the ridge as we see a trough pass to the north. System is then expected to slow down over the Caribbean, like I said, during the middle portions of the week, where the environmental conditions could become more conducive for development. Tropical depression could form over the Central Caribbean by the middle to the latter portion of this upcoming week. So still quite a long way to go. But let's have a look, first of all, at the ECM AI model here. And this, like I say, is geopotential height. So it's showing us the upper level ridges and troughs. Always interesting because that gives you an idea in terms of the steering of the system. So as can be seen here, this is analysis from Friday 12Z. Let's skip to the current period, which is around 6Z. You can see the system here open. Notice here it's not closed. There's an area of high pressure to the north here that is pushing the system along at a 20-25 mile per hour. We've got a trough then moving eastwards across North America. Then the system, as of 6Z tomorrow morning, gets into the eastern portion of the Caribbean. Remember the water temperatures underneath. The wind shear should begin to ease off. We'll look at wind shear in just a second here. Notice here there's a ridge kind of forming here to the north of the system as that trough then exits and pulls eastwards well to the north here. We've got this height rise to the north. The system remains somewhat of an open wave, but notice here, we skip back a couple of frames, you do see as it gets into the Caribbean. So it's an open wave through the islands at 18Z today. Then we'll see a closed contour developing here. You can see the system crosses the islands. Then there's the first closed contour. So that begins to show at least a mid-level circulation developing here. Does a surface low develop? That is possible. And then what gets interesting is we have a new trough moving eastwards across the lower 48 here. And then we see a bit of a split in the upper heights to the north of the system. With this system potentially becoming a little bit stronger, this is all the way out to 6Z on Wednesday, the system is beginning to see another contour on the outer edge of the inner circle, showing that this system is becoming a little bit better organised. With a stronger system, we see then more influence in the upper level situation here. And with that split, one piece the high over the Western Gulf, the other over the open Western Atlantic, there is a weakness in between. And as this system then starts to grab the upper level flow and it feels that weakness to the north, that is where the model is allowing this north to northeastward turn in the circulation. So the AI model doesn't have this becoming particularly robust, it has to be said. It's moving up towards Hispaniola. And the problem for this system is once it starts to interact with the high mountains of Hispaniola, that is going to do a work on the system. Notice here that it loses that core because it's interacting with the land. So that is the AI model. Let's skip right the way back and look at the level of shear within the environment here. So this is, again, ECM AI model here. And if we play through, you're not really seeing much, but notice here we've got a little bit of shear over South America, east of the system, and to the north here. And remember, these winds can sometimes have interaction with this system. But as the system continues to move into the Caribbean, you notice here that we've got some reasonably strong winds out of the west-southwest here. You can actually see that in the visible satellite. If we go back to the visible satellite, there does appear to be easterly winds, but there is an element of westerly winds as well in the upper level. So we've got low-level northeasterlies, mid to upper level westerlies here. That is the shear, and then of course it's moving at a very rapid 20-25 mile per hour pace as well here. But you can see here as we play in through the early portions of the week, we've got quite strong winds on the north side of the system here, weaker winds on the south side of the system. That is what is potentially keeping this system from becoming strong quickly, according to the ECM model here. Then it interacts with land, and you probably would see the demise of the system altogether. Now let's have another look at the next model here. Let's have a look at the ECM WF. This is the normal operational model, and have a look and see what it is indicating. So again, the geopotential heights and vertical velocity here. It's a nice way of looking at the level of spin within the atmosphere. So play through there. It moves through the islands tonight and then into the Caribbean tomorrow. Again, we've got an element of weakness as that trough then moves eastwards across the United States. It creates an opening. Then the system then fills that gap in the upper level flow. It pulls the system further west. So this is an interesting one. The ECMWF sees the system weaker and therefore not feeling that gap to the north. So it doesn't pull the system northwards here. Continue to play through. It's spinning away. This is all the way out the next weekend, by the way, and it's still stuck over the central Caribbean, which is rather interesting. Now let's have a quick look then at the shear at 850 millibars here. Is that the right chart? I don't think it is. In fact, let's just go back to this and switch to the ECMWF. That makes more sense. Let's skip back to the here now. And play through. Now this model here, I believe, sees less in the way of shear, or does it? Keeps it weaker. Yeah, there's shear on the north side of the system yet again. So this system still has a lot of things going against it. But if it gets into an environment here that is low shear, moisture, and the circulation gets going, that is a very, very rich environment for explosive cyclogenesis. But you notice the modelling is not overly enthusiastic at that. Now let's have a look at the GFS and look at the. Let's look again at the 850 Vorten winds. Now the GFS has got a stronger system, if you notice here. This is as of Tuesday 18Z. Play through, you notice here it's pulling it to the north. We've got a weakness here between the two ridge cores, one to the east, one to the west here. There's a gap in between. With a stronger system, it's feeling that upper level environment here, and it's feeling that weakness to the north. Bang, pulls it right into Hispaniola. And you notice here it crosses over, manages to hold its ground, if you notice here, which is interesting. That suggests to me that this system is stronger. Yeah, it's going to feel disruption within our core as it crosses over those lofty mountains. And then it moves into the open Western Atlantic as a very powerful hurricane. That is interesting, but it's staying well away from any land area, with the exceptions of the island of Bermuda. Notice here the big trough over the United States. That's probably what's forcing it to go northeastwards. So yeah, quite interesting. Not a huge amount to speak about over the next couple of days. So I may have an update come the middle portions of the week if this system develops. So stay tuned for that. Plenty of content I hope you can check out. I'll leave a link in the description below for last night's live stream. And also we've got a full week of European outlooks coming up, starting off tomorrow. Very, very close to 7,000 subscribers. By the way, a massive appreciation if you've already hit that subscribe button. If you're watching the day-by-day content, it is greatly appreciated. But if you haven't already done so, please hit that subscribe button. Lots to come, including potential for stormy weather. Should I say? I'll get there. So dare I say, the potential of stormy weather, but also colder weather coming up towards the back half of the upcoming work week. So plenty of reason to stick around. And then next weekend, I've got the all-important second winter update. And I've also announced the date in which I'm going to be releasing the 25-26 winter forecast, Sunday the 30th of November. So mark that in your diary. Exciting times to come. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Bye for now.